Greetings. My name is Brian Brannon, and I am Chair-elect of the Federal Bar Association's ADR section, and I also serve on the Federal Bar Association's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. In honor of the Centennial celebration of a woman's right to vote, the 19th Amendment, I'm conducting a series of interviews with sitting female federal judges called A Woman's Way to the Federal Bench. Today, I am privileged to be joined by the Honorable Sharon L. Gleason, U.S. District Court Judge for the District of Alaska, the first female Alaska District Court Judge in the history of the largest state in the country. Welcome, Judge Gleason.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Judge Gleason, if you could begin by telling a little bit about your way to the federal bench as a female and the first female, again, in the largest state in the union. Where did you begin? How did you get there? And what sort of milestones along the way are notable?
All right. Well, I grew up in upstate New York, and if someone had told me then that I'd be a federal judge in Alaska when I grew up, I would have seen that as not possible. It was never in my wildest dreams to even come to Alaska when I grew up. But I went to this law school in California and went and worked at a large firm in the city of San Francisco in the summer between my second and third year. And then I came back and I thought, I want to do something different than just go right into a big firm. And so there was a little 3x5 note card. We didn't have emails in those days on the bulletin board that said law clerks wanted in Alaska. And so I drove up here and I clerked for the state Supreme Court for a year and then decided to stay. Practiced a lot of domestic law and private practice, and then went on the state bench in 2001, and then in 2012 became a federal judge. So I thought I'd do environmental law when I was in law school many years ago, and it turns out I didn't do it for about 20, 30 years, and now I am having that as a big component of my work, as well as criminal work, which I didn't do as a practitioner or really much as a state judge. So that's been my path. I love my work. I feel very fortunate to be here with my colleagues and with our court staff and the attorneys that practice here.
We're so glad you're there. You were confirmed in 2011 by an 87-8 vote. Again, the first female in the history of Alaska. What sort of advice might you offer to aspiring young, diverse Alaskans on how to reach the federal bench?
I don't think the bench is for everyone. I think some people are really meant to be advocates, and you have to ask yourself, do you want to be a neutral, or are you more effective and enjoy more and feel you can accomplish more as an advocate? So that's a question to ask, and sometimes that changes over time. But I think the most important thing about being a person that would be able to get on a judicial bench is your reputation in the community, how you use your words, how your temperament is, how you always return calls and are someone that people know their word can be trusted. I think that is a key to success, really in any endeavor, but in terms of getting on the bench. Here in Alaska, we have a bar poll where all the lawyers rate the judicial candidates for the state bench, and I think it can be a bit of a popularity contest, I suppose, but in a good way in terms of people that you would want to have making decisions for you and your clients.
Absolutely. As an Alaska Superior Court judge, you had mentioned that you served a lot of different communities. Can you talk a little bit more about that, access to justice in rural America?
Well, rural Alaska is challenging, and we certainly, when I was a presiding judge, it was challenging to make sure that we had judicial officers in every community. Alaska state law has a peremptory challenge that a litigant can do of a judge once as a matter of right. And that was really hard when I was the presiding judge. If a community, if like the prosecutor in a small town decided he didn't like or she didn't like the judge and exercised a blanket challenge, then my job was to find somebody else to fly into these communities. So that was a challenge. On Alaska, I was the judge out there for the community, and I really enjoyed it because it let me do all types of cases that I normally didn't hear in Anchorage, from evictions to homicides, and everything else in between, and really felt like I was serving the community. I'd always go and speak at the school and try as best I could to help. I did a horrible thing once. I set a jury trial to commence when it was student testing, and the superintendent came over because he had lined up every single staff person to help administer the testing, and then they were all called in for jury duty, all the teachers. And but luckily that case resolved and the testing went on and it was a happy ending. But it's a unique experience to be in rural Alaska and conduct court. It was really quite something.
Absolutely.
But we do the best we can, and the planes don't always fly, but that's what you do.
I love it. How did that experience prepare you for the federal bench? Obviously, you were the presiding judge, and so you were in charge of things. But in terms of the difference between your experience at the state level versus the federal, can you differentiate that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the state was primarily civil work in Anchorage, and civil work meaning about half of our caseload was domestic. And we didn't have really designated judges doing that. All the civil judges did the domestic work, and it was a lot of that. And then abuse and neglect cases, probably about 10% of my caseload in state court as well. And then the rest was just general civil. Here, it's we do everything. So about half of the docket is criminal. Here, and so you get much more cases going to trial and much more emphasis on evidence rules than in domestic law. It's kind of a more of a telling the story but not getting into the evidentiary rules as much. So I enjoy it here. And then so that's the big difference, is that there's more criminal law that is on my docket, and certainly more administrative law. Up here, we have a lot of environmental cases. So for several years, I did cases in Arizona as well when they had a judicial emergency, and it was a very different docket than up here. But so probably from around 2012 to 2016 or 17, I did Arizona as well as here.
Fascinating.
Yeah, we have quite a connection with Arizona. We just hired away their clerk of court to come up here because he wanted to do more hunting and fishing. So now we've got him here.
We might have some Arizona federal judges watching this. Careful.
Oh, that's true. I'm friends with them, so it's all good.
I love it. So Alaska is home of the second female vice presidential candidate in the nation's history, and we just had the third vice presidential female candidate named actually yesterday. What is in store for diversity, equity, and inclusion on the federal level in terms of both women on the bench and diversity generally?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. I do think that there's certainly a fair amount of diversity here, gender diversity, in the criminal bar, both the prosecution and the defense. And I think that's good. In terms of diversity on the bench, we have so few openings come up here that I don't know what the future holds for Alaska. We did just have a new judge appointed earlier this year, but very few women applied. I think I try to stay active in the Women Lawyers Association here and really encourage people to consider becoming members of the judiciary, both state and federal, because I think it is good for litigants and for attorneys and spectators and jurors to see a judiciary that is a similar composition to the society at large. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Judge Gleason. I heard a little mention there of some voluntary bar activities important in recruiting the next generation of perhaps federal judges, depending on whether they want to be a federal judge or not.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been the Honorable Sharon L. Gleason of the U.S. District Court for the District of Alaska, the largest state in our country and the first female to ever serve on the Federal District Court for the Federal District of Alaska. I wish you well, Judge Gleason. Thank you so much for taking the time.
All right, thank you. Bye.